How's it going, everybody? This is another episode of Film Streak. My name is Rob. What I normally do on this podcast is to talk about new movies. Not this episode, because I just finished the 9th annual Houston Latino Film Festival, and we got to see so many films. You probably just heard the previous episode with my good friend, my longtime friend, Geraldo, and we got to talk about several of the films that were at the festival screening there, and we've even got more to talk about. And that's the point of this episode, is being there at the festival. This year, more than any previous year, it was more than films. There were so many films, but there was music, there was art, there was poetry readings, there was just a sense, just a community vibe there that is bigger than it's really ever been before. And of course, being a part of it or being involved in some ways, I always look forward to how it grows and what the future holds. But for this year, I really wanted to take some time and as always, talk to filmmakers that were coming through. Now, the interesting thing was, we also had a lot of artists there. We had a lot of other creative people there. We had musicians, and we ran out of time. We had so much to do in terms of who we wanted to talk to and how we were able to get them scheduled or get a time to do it, that we just ran out of time. And so there were so many people I got to talk to just one-on-one personally, and we never really sat down to do like a full interview about their work and about their goals and the things that they've done, their creative process. So I hope to be able to do that at some point here soon, maybe in a different episode, but I wanted to at least gather some of the interviews that we did do with some very interesting and a very diverse group of filmmakers, directors, producers, writers, cinematographers. It's just such an interesting, creative bunch. And I want to let them speak for themselves about their work. So with that in mind, we're just going to get to the interviews, and I'll see you on the other side. We're here at Houston Latino Film Festival, and I'm here with the director of our opening night film, Gabriela Moss. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your film in terms of the genesis of it?
So Boca Chica tells the story of Desi, and she's a young girl growing up in the beaches of the Dominican Republic in a community called Boca Chica. And I like to say that it's a film about the secrets that we keep in order to protect our family, our dreams, and this idea we have of our home. And it's actually a project that was the first film that was brought to me that I didn't write, but it had so many themes that overlapped with projects that I actually had in development and the work that I had been doing and the issues that were important to me, not only in the Dominican Republic, which is where my mother was born and raised, but also back home as a first-generation Dominican Guyanese American woman, and then globally realizing that there were these issues around protecting our young girls and hypersexualization. And so when Esterling Ramirez, who's the producer of the film, who runs a wonderful production company called Celine Films, had this idea and had partnered with Marite Ugas and Mariana Rodon from Venezuela and Peru to write this film, and then was looking for a Dominican American or Dominican diaspora director, I was like, had the conversation, and we really aligned in terms of the types of stories we wanted to tell. I had at that point spent 7 years trying to make this film Leche that went through the Sundance Labs. And so I was trying to find the partners for that film, and then had written another film that actually also had to do with sex tourism on the island and sisters. And so I think it was largely my experience and around researching that and my passion for telling these kinds of stories around young women that aligned with Sterling and Marite and Mariana working on this project, that we were like, okay, this is a team that's going to help realize this. And then, of course, I had my incredible crew and cast that then came a part of it as well.
And I want to ask you about that, specifically the cast. This is a film about Desi, the young girl in the film. You've got this story of a brother and a cousin that are they've also got some issues and some past that they're dealing with. And I think that's reflected across all of the characters in the film. How important was it to really hit that element of people dealing with either trauma or just things that have happened that they haven't really resolved.
Yeah, the film, I feel like first it was pitched, it was a treatment when I got it, but it was pitched by Sterling as this hopeful film centered around this young girl whose, eyes are being awakened to what is happening in her community and amongst her friends. And then she further learns about her family's secrets. And that's why I really clung on to when I was casting for this film, this idea of secrets and the secrets that each character is keeping from the people that are closest to them, but also from themselves. There's a lot of inability to confront their deepest desires, and then because of the things that they don't want to tell each other. And it was very important, clearly on the page from what I read from the start. But it was, it is an ensemble piece, like you said. And so when I first read it, I was like, oh, there's this large family, there's a wedding. And as a writer, I've always told much more intimate POV stories. So that was part of my okay, how do we tackle this with the nuance and delicacy that we want? And that was always to go back to Desi's perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that. The film really does kind of build to this. It's almost a set piece of this wedding. Yeah. And you've got several different threads with all the characters leading to it. Yeah. So it's not just one character's journey to the wedding, but I'm curious, tying all those threads together, did you find it to be challenging with these elements?
That was definitely one of the most daunting things. And I think that's why Desi was always my North Star, is first of all, to direct something that for the first time, was not something that I gave birth to as a screenwriter. And I come to filmmaking as a writer first. So yes, there was a treatment and there was a lot of feedback I was giving. And then at one point when Marite and Mariana stepped away, also knowing that it was my first feature and having been brought onto the project by Sterling, I was able to add and color into the lines and be okay, this feels like the texture of Desi, introducing things like the music was so important. I was I want some sort of set piece or something that connects her to, and I want music to be its own character and to show the diversity of music within Dominican culture and origins. And so the headphones became a part of the film, and synesthesia and all of these things. So for me, with all of these stories, it was constantly okay, grounded back to Desi. How is she feeling? How is she interacting with this character that's going through something? Obviously, Fran is massive, like you mentioned, her brother. But yeah, everyone has a role in the corruption that's happening, but also in Desi finding her voice. That was really, yeah.
I think you give audiences a lot of, I guess, a wide range of characters to identify with in one way or another. This is a very specific thing. To me, the one that really stands out is the brother who's in New York. It's New York, right?
Yeah.
Where he's telling people he's living a life that he's not living. And he's actually secretly kind of struggling. And to come home and kind of confront that or own up to it in a way.
Yeah, I mean, a massive theme and issue that was presented is this idea of dreams in general, but then with Fran, the American dream, or there's something more out there, and there's an idea of that. And sometimes, yes, that is the thing you need to do, but there's always a reason and beauty in coming back. And this idea of homecomings, and that what you left is really hard to confront sometimes, but it's sometimes necessary to get to that next place. And for me, making this film was okay, a homecoming spiritually and almost ancestrally. I mean, it was in my immediate family because my mother was born and raised there, but also we wrapped the film on the 1-year death anniversary of my abuela, and to be back where my mother and her siblings didn't return to, and as the generation after that, and to be making films amongst the community and telling stories that are nuanced, that was so important to me. And so that was kind of when the process felt like it mimicked the story, and this idea of Fran goes, I mean, spoiler alert, but there's an aspect of staying in the island at the end and maybe finding some success or a path there, for his music, versus sort of the lie, like you said, he's living in New York.
Right. And I think that's something that I've kind of noticed. It's not necessarily a theme, but it is kind of a recurring, I guess, a motif where a lot of films, specifically with Latin characters, because a lot of times there is if not an actual, like literal, like country to go back to, there's like a home to go back to, like a past to go back to. And then see it through the eyes of someone who doesn't quite have a past yet.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's a very...
But an inherited past, which is interesting that I don't think, we all have this past that we talk about. I feel like especially in our communities a lot, the ancestors and like, okay, what sacrifices have we made and what honor are we honoring them? But yeah, it's true. She doesn't really have that history and she's being awakened to what she doesn't know about what she's carrying. Yeah.
Right. And I know that's a thread in the film, which I appreciate the acknowledgement of. There are some really kind of darker sides to certain parts of the world, certain cultures, and to see that element in there as a threat, of course, but to see like this is not a story about that. It's an element, it's a thing to be aware of, and a character like this, or just young people, young girls specifically, can be in very, very extreme sort of danger of falling into this.
Yeah, there's a lot of delicacy and grace that we wanted to place within tackling these characters and these darker themes, because I think sometimes even when I will read the log like again or how it's been presented in certain places, like yes, this issue is very important. We should have the conversation about these exploitation. That is why, the origin of why Sterling wanted to make the film, the origin of why being in these communities, my eyes were open to something that essentially everyone knows is happening but doesn't talk about very candidly, which you see more in your face in certain environments. But it's something that would, like when I brought the film to Miami, I mean it happens in the backyard in New York, and I know it's happening in Texas. It's like trafficking is a huge issue in this country, and as I would be a disservice as somebody who was born in the States, who's tied and telling stories about my heritage and traveling between worlds, to not be grounded in specificity, but acknowledge the reality that this is overarching and it's not some plague for Latin America or for the Caribbean or for Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of delicacy into that, and family sort of grounds it in this more universal and relatable place for everyone.
There could be the temptation, let's say, to this film, this story, we're going to solve that problem. Yeah. I mean, it's a massive problem, and it's a problem that is not easy to even talk about, right? Mm-hmm. So this film at least deals with it in a realistic way. It's very difficult, and in some ways, family is your sanctuary, right? To hold those people tight and pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And
your sanctuary and I guess our film's interesting because the mother, it's hurt people kind of happening in that situation, and with Elvis too, and that he, has a stronger connection with his aunt, their mother. So there's that duality to family can be your salvation and can be your downfall, and how do you reconcile that?
Right.
Which is, like you said, I don't, as filmmakers and with my collaborators, we don't have all the answers, but I want to have that discussion and open, and that is why it's so beautiful being at the Houston Latino Film Festival too, is this is where you get to be a part of that or hear the questions that are being posed, and constantly come out of it thinking more deeply about, your question of why, why I decided that, okay, Boca Chica is a story that I want to be a part of. So,
yeah. Well, I tell you what, speaking of being here at the festival, so you have a screening that is happening right now. The audience will have great questions for you.
They
may have better questions than I do.
They always do. This is a good warm-up for me too.
Well, good. Well, it's great to have you here. It's great to talk to you and to talk about the film. And if anybody is coming to the festival, well, I'm sorry you missed it today, but I'm sure they'll be able to see it at some point.
Yeah, Boca Chica will be available hopefully to rent very soon. We're traveling to different universities with Praga Films, which has an incredible collection of Latin American cinema. I highly encourage, if you're in the university or academia space, anywhere in Latin America studies, African Caribbean studies, Spanish, to check them out. There's a ton of films from the Dominican Republic, and I I can't stress enough, like seeking out the films that are coming out of our country, thanks to the cinema law and the Dije Cine, our film commission. There's nuance of genres and beautiful, deep stories being told from a wide variety of perspectives. And we hope that the film will be, available more widely
That's great.
to audiences here.
If anybody is interested in the film, where can they maybe look up some info about it?
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at Boca Chica Film, and you will find more about the film there and our future screenings. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it was great to talk to you, Gabriela.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you, Houston Latino Film Festival.
All right, so we're here at the Houston Latino Film Festival. We're here with director Ezra Axelrod. Tell us about some of the genesis of this project as a documentary.
This project started as a photo essay in the Washington Post magazine in 2021 by a good friend of mine named Heidi Pastor. She is an American who lived in Cali for 20 years, was married to a Caleño, and I met her when I moved to Cali. And when she shared this piece with me, her images were very provocative, showing this phenomenon of ex-evangelical Christians converting to Orthodox Judaism, adopting Hebrew names, completely transforming their lives to follow the very rigorous Orthodox practices of Judaism. And to see these images of very, these are people from the barrios of Cali who are doing this transition. And it just was such an intersectional and provocative story. It really lent itself to film.
How have you found the reception to a film like this? Because it is at an intersection of different cultures and different, I guess, even nationalities. There's so many different, maybe conflicting things in it. And how have you found the reaction to that?
What excites me most about this film is how it takes a very the story of the Old Testament, which is very well known in Latin America. In the U.S., the number one bestseller in Spanish continues to be the Bible. So the Spanish-speaking audience is very familiar with the Exodus story and the kind of the plots of the Torah. And so starting there, it's an exciting allegory for the Latin American exodus that is kind of the everyday reality when you live in Latin America, saying bye to people who are leaving to start their lives elsewhere. And this film really laments that Latin America continues to be a place where people dream of leaving, and the consequences of that are felt every day and throughout Latin America: a brain drain, the instability, etc. So I think this film uses the kind of religiosity, I guess you say, of Latin America to make a point about that exodus.
And was there a piece of this that had like a personal connection for you?
Yeah, so I'm Jewish, and when I started this project with my partner David, who is Colombian, I would say he's Jewish. He's Jew adjacent.
Okay.
We've been together for 20 years. I was very, very focused on kind of assimilating into Cali culture, which is very difficult. By that point, it had been maybe 6 years that I'd really been focused on the Spanish, just the way of being, trying to figure out how to be let in and not feel like such an outsider. And then I came face to face with these protagonists who were trying to figure out how not to be seen as outsiders in the Jewish world. And so we immediately had this connection where it was like, you learn from me, I'll learn from you. And that continues to be very much a basis of a relationship.
Is there anything that I think for audiences who watch this film and they maybe see this sort of narrative that plays out in real life for people, is there anything you think they should take away from this?
Well, I think that what Iska Menahem's story encourages us to do is to see identity in a much more nuanced light. There are many things about Iska Menahem's beliefs that maybe are very unpalatable to a lot of people, but when you get to know them and you connect on a personal level to their dreams, to their family dynamics, to the love that they have for each other, and to their commitment to their faith, I think that you start to see that all of us have this tendency to just write off people who are different from us, and more than ever, that tendency is becoming dangerous. It's becoming detrimental to our ability to function as a society, and that's what I love about this story. That's what I love about Iska Menahem, is that they encourage me to interrogate my own prejudices, and the way that I, before this project, wrote off religion, wrote off faith, really had a lot of rejection of religious people. And
so there was maybe a bit of enlightenment just going through the process of making the film.
Yeah,
Is that? Okay.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. So we're glad to have you here at the festival. And you were here in the screening, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So you did the Q&A?
Yeah.
Did you get a great reaction there? How was your screening? How did it go?
Well, something that was really gratifying about this screening, so Torre Tropical has played at quite a few Jewish film festivals, and it played at the Cali International Film Festival, where it won the Audience Award, which was really great. That was the home audience. It was very receptive, very, just thrilled to see this side of the city on screen. And there was somebody sitting in front of me in this screening, a Latino guy who just laughed so much, and that is the most gratifying thing, is to be able to play to Latino audiences, to Spanish-speaking audiences, because they just understand all of the jokes, all of the humor. They get who Iska is, they get who Menahem is, and I feel like they're able to connect on an even deeper level.
That's good. You can see that it's reaching people.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have you here, Ezra. I appreciate it. Thanks for sitting down with us, and congratulations on having your film here.
Thank you for having me in Houston.
We're here at the Houston Latino Film Festival. I'm here with one of the directors of The Strike, Joe Bill Munoz. And Joe Bill, thanks for coming to the festival.
Of course, thanks for having us.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the beginnings of this idea with the film?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. It's really nice to bring the film home to Houston. It means a lot to bring this film to the community I was raised in. Is really special for me personally. The origin story of the film, my co-director Lucas, who's off camera, was kind of following the story for a long time, going back 10 years before we ever got together and picked up a camera, following a lot of the family members who are involved in the movement, who were sort of the voices for their loved ones incarcerated. Fast forward to about 2018, 2019, Lucas and I are both in graduate school in the documentary film program at UC Berkeley. And we kind of just worked on each other's kind of student films and kind of just formed this kind of creative collaboration. And upon graduating, decided to kind of start making this film. And at first, it was just kind of an idea, kind of a kernel. It was a really compelling story, really interesting story. Lucas had compiled all this footage and reporting and met all these folks, these family members. Then it was also around that time that a lot of the main central protagonists of the film started being released from prison. And it was kind of then that we kind of hopped in Lucas's car, drove down to Los Angeles from Oakland, and started meeting these guys. And, one thing led to another, and we were interviewing them for, 8-9 hour stretches, because the story was so big and vast and important, and there was so much to say. And these guys are such incredible people and speakers. It was kind of at that moment that an idea turns into a film, and then, into a reality. But it took many years. It took about 5 years of us kind of working on it for it to kind of finally come to fruition. But
Okay. And is that something, the idea of knowing or having in your family people who are in this situation in the prison system, Is that anything that you had a sort of a connection to, not necessarily a personal connection, but a deeper interest in before making the film?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, coming from a mixed status immigrant community here in Texas, where the sort of criminal justice system or criminal legal system is, infamously sharp and brutal and harsh, I was inclined towards caring about this, and also just as a person who cares about human rights and about people being treated fairly. But yeah, I would say that I was kind of naturally inclined to the story, but at the same time, I don't want to say that that means that I necessarily knew what it took to tell the story, because it's a really complicated story and involves a lot of people with individual experiences. I don't know what it's like to be in solitary confinement for decades at a time, or to support a loved one going through that. And it was really through listening to the folks who did have that experience that I would say kind of the interests and the inclination grew into a passion that kind of propelled the film forward. It was shocking nonetheless, despite this being something that I was inclined to care about and that it was of interest. It was shocking nonetheless to learn about the way in which California's system of solitary confinement worked and operated, and how it was developed over time, and sort of the origin story. I mean, at every turn, it became more and more interesting, and just the sort of picture grew even more detailed and bigger and richer. As a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker specifically, it was just something that you could just fall into and really kind of go into a deep dive with.
For an audience to watch this film and to see some of the things that it reveals about, say, the California criminal justice system, or the way some of the prisons handled this, right? And I think it's eye-opening for an audience to watch it. And I'm curious, like, how much, and you kind of touched on it a second ago, how much of a shock was it for you personally, kind of come into this material?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was shocking to know that people are in solitary confinement for decades, that people can survive it, that people did survive it, but also, just the way in which it was a legal process, sort of a bureaucratic process that involved many people at many different levels of government to sort of move it through. And that over time, there were all these sort of political movements in California, from Ronald Reagan's time as governor to the present day. It was interesting learning about that. And also just the way in which the way in which something like this is kind of codified over time and just becomes normal. I think that normalcy is just as shocking as the
how systemic, deep rooted it becomes.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And at the same time, it was also shocking and inspiring to just meet a lot of these guys who went through it and what they did to sort of turn the course of history. That was just as surprising as anything else, if not more so, just to know that, folks used their experience and turned it into power.
How did that work out in terms of reaching out and connecting with a lot of the men that are in the film or with their families, and sort of getting them to be on board with this, understanding the idea of the film and becoming a real element, a crucial element of the film?
Right. Yeah, that's where I have to definitely give a lot of credit to Dolores Canales, who's in the film, who's has her own experience with solitary confinement with the prison system. But she's, although she probably wouldn't describe herself as this, but she's a real leader in the movement, and she just like knows everybody, right? She probably has your phone number. I wouldn't be surprised. And so it was really through her, through Lucas's relationships from years ago, that we met a lot of folks, but more importantly, got their trust, and just kind of went from there.
Something in the film that is notable to me watching it, or to any viewer, is there are moments, there are images, footage that seems like it would be kind of hard or impossible to get. You've got moments where you've got prisoners talking to like the heads of the prison system, and how did that process come about? Like getting access to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a range of different materials in the film. From these kind of primary interviews with a lot of the guys who experienced firsthand, years of solitary confinement at Pelican Bay or inside the California prison system. And just finding those folks alone was hard because it's not like there's a database for that somewhere. Honestly, it's not like the prison system itself keeps up with that. Every single person who spoke to us, who decided to speak with us, and who we connected with, I'm extremely grateful for. But then, yes, we also interviewed folks from within the prison system and got them to talk to us. Years ago, I worked at this organization called the Center for Investigative Reporting. They produce this podcast called Reveal. And I met this journalist, Michael Montgomery, who for years had followed this story and done some work for PBS about it. And told him about this, and he was really excited, wanted to help. Michael's a producer on the film, and he had a lot of those connections with folks within the system, folks who had a complicated relationship, who one man helped build this system, but at the same time, at a certain point, changed his mind. And that story is told in the film. And then in terms of finding some of the footage we found, there was, I think what you're probably most referring to is this confidential footage that's in the film that's sort of secret recordings of some of the leaders of the hunger strike and some high-ranking prison officials from Sacramento. And they were kind of negotiating, the premises, they're negotiating an end to these protests. And that I can't specifically say where it came from, fell off the back of a truck kind of thing. But for, a documentary filmmaker, it's like gold, it really opens up the entire story and lets you really tell the story from the footage itself and not vice versa, which is,
it's really compelling. I mean, just to see a moment like that, and several moments in the film, of course, but there's so much that's happening in that moment. Even unsaid things.
Right.
And I think it speaks to a lot of what is a part of the story. So in terms of once the film, you've kind of got it in the can or got it in a shape that you think is the film, how is either the reception, or have you had interaction with other prisoners or seen reacting to this story on film in this way?
Oh man, yeah. That's a really it's been a whirlwind since we released the film last April. We had our premiere in Toronto, and then since then, this is our 60-plus screening, in-person screening. The film is now on PBS. It got picked up by Independent Lens, which means that it's broadcasting in households across the country, but also because it's public television inside prisons. So guys on the inside are able to watch it, and we've been hearing back stories from people through the community about folks gathering in day rooms to watch the film together, hearing stories from people telling us how people have reacted. You never know how a film is going to be received. You never, you're always thinking, is anyone going to watch it? Is it just going to be like my 5 friends and my parents? But it's been more than we could have asked for, the way that the community has embraced the film and gathered all these communities together to watch the film, all these screenings that we've been having. We have, like I said, this is our 60-plus screening, and we've got 30 more coming up. And it's been great, and it's also been great seeing a lot of our screenings that we have where we're there in person, or some of the folks from the film are there in person, some of the solitary survivors. It feels like more than just a film screening. It's a community gathering. It's a place for people to be honored, for communities themselves to honor themselves and respect the work they've done. I can't tell you how many times we've done a screening where somebody has gotten up in the audience and said, my dad was in Pelican Bay, my uncle was in Pelican Bay, or I was in Pelican Bay, and I was a part of this. Just the one quick aside was, somebody who was, indirectly impacted by the hunger strikes, because after the hunger strikes, a lot of reforms happened, a lot of educational programming was allowed, and one guy was able to start enrolling in college courses, and then through that got released, and then was able to enroll into a university in Southern California afterwards. And he came to our screening at that university, and he was like, I wouldn't be here in college if it wasn't for the hunger strikes, if it wasn't for what happened. And that's happened like numerous times. So it's just been amazing to learn all these little stories, but also I think that the film is kind of playing a role in kind of connecting these maybe sort of tangentially related people or ideas or consequences. And there's a kind of real, just kind of community building that it's serving, which is, who would have thought years ago when we were driving from Oakland to California to Los Angeles up and down the coast that this would be where we're at. And then the last thing I'll say is we screened the film inside San Quentin inside San Quentin State Prison. They held their first ever film festival, and it was just a kind of mind-blowing experience to go inside and screen the film, where a lot of the guys were in solitary confinement. They were at Pelican Bay. They participated in the hunger strike, which was, viewed and still is viewed. I mean, it was a violation of rules to go on a protest. And then to see now these guys proud of the work that they did, proud of what they were able to accomplish, giving people their freedom back, was really awesome, was really amazing. It was when we took Jack Morris, who's in the film, who's a solitary survivor, we took him with us inside. And it was just amazing the way he was embraced, the way folks were really thankful to him, this sort of younger generation of folks who now kind of see a pathway for the rest of their lives. And since then, Dolores has been helping get the film inside juvenile detention centers as well, using the film as a tool. The film is kind of having this life now.
It's become its own thing.
It's become its own thing. It's gone to college. It's moving in. It's got a car. Yeah, it's great.
Wow. Well, that's great. It's an excellent film. You're going to be here in the screening or do a Q&A after the screening. So I'm sure the audience will have some interesting questions for you also. It's great to have you here at the festival. I appreciate you coming, sitting down with us for a little bit. And anything else you'd like to say about where somebody might be able to find out more? I know you said it's available on PBS, but if they're interested in maybe being a part of this or understanding more about this story.
Yeah, the first place to go to is our website, thestrikefilm.com. We have more information about kind of how to plug into various different places, but we also have our Instagram where we post about like upcoming screenings, upcoming ways. We're still on tour ourselves, taking the film, going with the film and screening it in different places. But as I said, it's also on PBS. It's on Independent Lens. It's broadcasting. You just kind of have to check your local listings. It's also on YouTube. PBS now, Independent Lens puts its films on YouTube, which is awesome. The easiest kind of way to watch something, right? My family won't watch anything of mine unless it's on YouTube. So that's probably, if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in inviting us because you're a part of a community organization or you're a part of a church group, whatever it might be, a school, we're more than happy to kind of help coordinate that. You can find out how to do that on our website.
All right, great.
Thank you.
It was great to talk to you.
Likewise, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so that's a little taste of some of the folks that showed up for the 9th Annual Houston Latino Film Festival, some of the filmmakers and creative people that we had in attendance. Made some really interesting connections and made some new friends, I think, because it's not just the filmmakers that show up and the people that bring their work, but the volunteers there, the people who just are coming to the festival for the first time. It's such an interesting mix of community and creativity, and it's just a palpable energy you feel. And I'm sure that's the case for many film festivals or many kind of events like this. So if you were there and maybe we talked for a minute, maybe you heard about this some other way, hey, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening. Until we get to more films in the future, if you want to hear what's been going on with the streak itself, we're up to over 600, I think like 650 films. I don't even remember at this point. But you can go to filmstreak.com. You can find other episodes there. You can sign up to get them by email if that's easier. If you don't do like Spotify or whatever. I mean, who doesn't? But still, it's an option. Also, if you want to find more about these films, you want to find out more information, you go to IMDb. I have a list. It's got all of these films in order that I've talked about on all of these episodes. Now, for me, it's a tool. It's just so I can keep track of stuff. For you, hey, this is a way you can add it to your watch list, or you can, I don't know, find out where it's streaming or where you can watch it. For now, I'm going to get out of here because, man, this festival, it's 5 days. It's films, it's music, it's art, it's fun, but it's also exhausting. So if you attended the festival, thank you for coming out. I appreciate seeing you. I know the founders, David, Pedro, who I've had on the podcast several times now, they all appreciate it. And so from them, from all the volunteers too, we say thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for showing up, for supporting. And we look forward to seeing you next year. And until then, you know what to do, man. Go watch something new.